Welcome to the Renegade Health Boss podcast, where we push the boundaries of what's possible in health and wellness. I'm your host, Heather Gray, a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and certified bioenergetic practitioner. And each week we dive deep into the world of physical, mental, spiritual health, biohacking, relationships. But we're not just talking about the basics. I'm bringing you conversations with the true renegades, experts who are challenging the status quo in their fields, breaking barriers, and uncovering the real truth behind what it takes to live an incredible, joy-filled, and optimized life. If you're ready to step out of the ordinary and step into a life of extraordinary health and happiness, you're in the right place. Let's get started on this journey to becoming your own Renegade Health Boss. Before we jump in, let's hear a word from our sponsor.
Dr. Nathan Bryan here with our N101 nitric oxide orally disintegrating tablet. You know, nitric oxide is a gas, so how do we deliver a bioactive gas in a solid dose form? We've created a solid dose form of bioactive gas. This lozenge, which is designed to have a resident time of 5 to 6 minutes. So you take this lozenge, you put it in your mouth, don't chew it, don't swallow it. Let it dissolve. As it's dissolving, it's releasing a certain amount of nitric oxide over a certain period of time. And that release of nitric oxide is designed to recapitulate nitric oxide production and nitric oxide signaling. So if your body can't make nitric oxide for whatever reason, this product delivers it for you. But more importantly, the technology in this lozenge recouples the NOS enzyme, so we improve endothelial function. We improve the body's ability to make nitric oxide on its own. And because it's an orally disintegrating tablet that sits on the top of the tongue and moves around, it's killing the bad bacteria. It's maintaining the diversity of the oral microbiome. We're improving the nitrate-reducing bacteria, so we're improving the oral microbiome. So this product generates nitric oxide and improves the body's ability to make nitric oxide through both pathways, endothelial nitric oxide production through restoration of the oral microbiome. There's no other product on the market that does what this product does. This is an orally disintegrating tablet that releases nitric oxide. We can quantify it, we can detect it, we can verify it. So if your body can't make nitric oxide, we do it for you. N101 activating lozenges. Get it today.
Yay! Welcome Shamini Jain to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Heather. Good to see you.
You as well. I just absolutely love everything you're doing in this world. Like, I wish I'd be as cool as you, but I'm glad I can talk to you and learn from you and, help spread your message across this world because you really, truly are doing incredible things. Tell me, how did you get started in this path that you're on right now? And I know you got started at a really early age.
Yeah, I think it was really singing to myself, honestly. I really think that's where it started. One of my earliest memories is just walking around the house in my living room singing songs to myself. And I noticed that there was something literally about the singing to myself that gave me great comfort. And even at that really young age, I must have been like 3 or 4, it just brought me back home. I don't know how else to explain it. And it was really vibratory. It was vibrational for me. Even back then, I didn't have words for what it was, but it was sort of my entry in some ways into energy and the power of what I've been studying for so many decades that we call the Biofield now, right? And I think it really honestly began there just with that kind of practice. And then, of course, growing up as an East Indian Jan in the Deep South, kind of exploring different ways of knowing God, knowing our spiritual home, knowing our soul. And I was always a real voracious reader. So I would, find myself picking up books like Easy Journey to Other Planets, which was right next to my mom's Cosmo magazines, and, kind of saying, oh, both of these are really kind of far out in their own way, right. And I actually found myself more gravitating toward the metaphysical books than the Cosmo magazines, which seemed so boring to me, honestly, at the time. I was like, oh, this is all a woman is supposed to be. This doesn't make sense. Okay, let me try the other stuff on the shelf. So it was, I think, always a profound curiosity. What does it mean to be human? What is the nature of vibration? How do I come back home to myself? And then as I grew older and got more and more interested in the scholarly pursuits of things like consciousness and healing, it became really clear that my friends who were Baptist Christian could go to church and talk about God, in their spiritual life. We could do our meditation practices in my house, and, we could talk about the eternal aspects of the soul. But of course, in school, you didn't do that. And that's all fine. I think most of us probably believe that the separation of church and state is a good thing. And yet, all the stuff I was reading about the power of consciousness, even yoga practices, breathing practices. I mean, these books were super detailed that I was reading at an early age. They talked about, you do this kind of breath work and you're going to regulate your parasympathetic nervous system this way. But they were written by yogis. And so the skeptic in me was like, how do they know that? Like, maybe they're just blowing smoke, maybe they're just trying to use the newest jargon and, but it's not really
all anecdotal.
Right. I'm like, well, how do they know that? Right. So when I went to college at Columbia University, and I studied mostly psychology, but then like a crazy person decided to change my major my senior year into behavior, took 5 high-level bio classes my senior year. That was
my gosh.
A little crazy. But neuroscience was just coming online then. That was the early 90s. And they were still telling us our brains didn't change after age 7. A lot of things that we know are not true. So there I was, kind of where neuroscience was just beginning to evolve as a more popular field in research. And there was a lot we didn't know. And right away, my thought was, there's a lot we don't know. I mean, if you guys are telling me that the brain doesn't change after age 7, all I need to do is look around at people and nature and suspect that maybe we're wrong about that. Maybe there's more research we need to do. Long story short, it brought me into the field of psychoneuroimmunology, which is a real fancy term for studying how the mind and body interact. We look at basically different things like emotional states of meditation, shifts in consciousness, how they affect our biology, how they affect our immune system, our hormone system. And finally, I felt like I was beginning to find a home where at least people were talking beyond just the brain and the static nature of it, which is what they thought. It was real stagnant, right? And now we were looking at a little bit more of a dynamic nature of the body and the interaction of the mind and emotions and body. But what about the psyche? Psyche means spirit. That's actually what it translates to. It translates to spirit. So with my own experiences and then the experiences I'd had in meditation, studying that as well, doing studies on that, but also my own practice and experiencing things like Reiki, I really began to question, why aren't we studying the nature of vibration? Like, why aren't we studying this energetic aspect of who we are? And from a spiritual perspective now, I call it really putting the Shakti back into medicine. It's like been the missing link. People will talk about the feminine kind of being omitted, and we can talk about that. There's a lively conversation to be had there. What does it mean to omit the feminine and the feminine perspective in science and medicine? I think this is part of that, the study of energy and energy fields, how it relates to emotions, no doubt, but also how it relates to our spiritual well-being and the thread of beingness that connects us with all things. It's Shakti. We're all pulsing and vibrating. We're actually not separate. The Biofield teaches us that. So that's kind of how I got into it, was the profound curiosity, recognizing that there were huge gaps in what we knew scientifically, and then going back to traditional teachings to help inform current science. And so that's a lot of what, we're up to today with my nonprofit, Consciousness and Healing Initiative, is really putting those beautiful pieces back together, weaving those threads together.
You're such a badass. Like, I'm just beaming. My face hurts from smiling so much. I'm reminded, I really didn't know much about you until I hosted that call with you and Bruce on Humanity's team. And then listening to you talk, and I just got so excited. I was like, who is that? And then Jim was like, oh, she, hosted a thing out at Sunrise Ranch when we were living there. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, I was this close to this woman and I didn't know who she was at the time. Like, But that's, I mean, consciousness and healing, that's like my 2 favorite, things to talk about these days, because, as a woman, as a functional practitioner, we've taken out the bioenergetic part of it. We've taken out the consciousness of healing. And that's really where a lot of the juicy magic happens, right? Is when we marry all these things together. And so, like I said, I just absolutely adore everything you're doing in this world. This is a great time. We're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to dive a little deeper. We're going to go talk about her foundation that she founded. She's got a book coming out, Healing Ourselves, the Biofield Science, and an album coming out. So, because you're not busy at all. But we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Hey there. I used to not be able to drink coffee. I always reacted to it horribly. It hurt my stomach. It made me over jittery and would inflame me and cause histamine issues. But not anymore. Since I started drinking Danger Coffee by Dave Asprey. It's his next level of coffees. He came out with Bulletproof, and now this is the next level up. So it is mold-free, toxin-free, and he infuses it with minerals and electrolytes. So unlike other coffees, they can actually pull minerals and electrolytes from your system because it's too acidic. It actually helps replenish those. And so I don't react to it at all. I get to have my Bulletproof coffee with my MCC oil and my grass-fed butter, and I don't get the jitters, I don't get the crashes, and I love how focused and energized it makes me feel. Again, non-toxic, mold-free, infused with minerals and electrolytes. I absolutely love Danger Coffee. Make sure to check out my website, thelimeBoss.com. Go to the resource section and get yours. Awesome. Welcome back. Oh my gosh. If you're not fired up by the first half of this, then you're dead. I'm telling you. How could you not? And we're having this conversation. This won't go out, sadly, for a few more months, but we're having this conversation in the month of March, which is, International Women's, Month. And we're talking about, we just brought up the absence of women in health and in the studies and the research. And, what a beautiful time to be a woman. Right. Like these days, it's like nothing else out there. And it's such a beautiful movement that's happening. And I'm just so blessed to be a part of it. And so, yeah, I'd love to dive a little deeper into all those areas, if you would.
Yeah, you bet. So you help me lead the conversation here, Heather. What aspects of women and integrating the feminine in medicine are you most excited about?
I just, in an energetic way, how have we seen that kind of shifts what we're being taught, how things show up, how, women are treated differently than men when it comes to, medicine and a lot of different things in the world. How do we close this gap? And, where did it come from to begin with?
Yeah, well, we know it comes from the patriarchy. It's pretty, that's pretty simple. And in some ways, I would say what we call colonialism is kind of very related to this, right? In the way that we see it in medicine and the shortcomings that we've had in medicine is because we've only had this one way, really, of looking at things. And in our field, sometimes we say we have an over focus on what we call materialism, right? That nothing really exists except my physical body. 50 years ago, it was like your emotions, which are intangible and invisible, can't even affect your body. And guess what? Women are emotional, so therefore we discount, but we put a lot of focus on the mind, the mind wants to find things out. The mind is precise. The mind, wants to sort of dial down into the problem and fix it, So we employ that kind of mentality in medicine, that mostly if I really wanted to fix the problem, I need to use something physical that's outside of me. I need to use my mind. And we just sort of let go of this idea that our emotional life, our relational life, our relation with our environment, with people mattered. And yet the data shows us very differently, right? It's fascinating, actually, that these so-called soft metrics, which aren't things that you measure in a biomarker, are actually more predictive of health sometimes than the biomarkers themselves. I mean, a perfect example, quality of life, which is considered a soft metric. How do you measure that? Well, you ask people, right? You ask people questions about their quality of life. It turns out quality of life is a better predictor of longevity from things like cancer than biomarkers. So if you actually want to know how long someone's going to survive who has a cancer diagnosis, quality of life is actually a better predictor than their biomarkers. I mean, think about that. And it is very much related to emotional and relational states. But going back to the field of study that I've been really focused on, and our nonprofit Consciousness and Healing Initiative is really focused on, this area of the biofield. Here again, we have, what is the biofield? We describe it in science as invisible and interpenetrating fields of energy and information that guide our health. And that's kind of sciencey, right? But what we're talking about is the energy that we can sense. Sometimes we can sense it deeply. Sometimes it's very, very subtle. And yet what we're learning from studying practices like Reiki, healing touch, laying on of hands, pranic healing, is that sensing into and working with these fields of energy can actually foster health down to cellular changes in the body. And I go over a lot of this in my book. Heather, my book, Healing Ourselves, for those who really like the science, you're really well resourced there. It's got over 600 peer-reviewed published scientific references. So if you ever run into people and they're like, oh yeah, that's not real, there's not evidence, well, just hand them this book, because they can look at all the references and dig up every single one. I was born and raised, as I joke, as a recovering academic, right? So I'm going to talk science. I'm going to make sure that I'm actually referencing real studies. And this book does that. In a nutshell, what those studies are teaching us is that whether I practice meditation, yoga, qigong, any reflective, what we call mind, body, spirit practice, I'm going to reduce inflammation in my body. I'm going to harmonize my nervous system. I'm going to improve my mood. And that can actually help me to prevent disease. So what's wonderful is this is nearly mainstream at this point, which is so awesome. But when you talk about energy healing, it's a different story, right? Because now we're not talking about mind, stretching, needles, any of that. It's like, how can someone sensing the energy around someone else and essentially doing nothing but letting go and being a conduit for universal life force or soul force, or, Gaia, many different ways that we describe this. That's the practice, right? It's like, I'm going to tune into you. I'm going to tune into your higher self. I'm going to ground and actually get my ego out of the way. And then I'm going to be guided as to how I need to unblock your energy flow so that you can better heal yourself. That's what nearly every single energy healer I have talked to says that they do, regardless of where the origins of their practice come from. Well, when we look at the data, what we find is that there are over 400 clinical trials of these kinds of energy healing practices that overall, when we put all that data together, we see that they are useful for reducing pain, for reducing anxiety, for shifting symptoms in cancer, reducing fatigue there as well, and also impacting immunity. And the latest studies done by our colleagues are actually, and these are with cell models and animal models, kind of gold standard research that's being done at places like MD Anderson Cancer Center, where they've looked at several different kinds of healers now, carefully controlled studies like you might do if you were studying a drug, only they're studying healers. And they're showing down to the cellular changes, reductions in tumor spread, reductions in inflammatory cytokines, which are inflammatory molecules in the body, reductions in the signaling between cells. I mean, just on and on. They're already starting to look at electrical connectivity between cells. And so we're seeing that bioelectric communication is shifting in the body in response to energy, which is completely non-physical. It's consciousness at work. It's consciousness directing energy, which brings us back to, I am a powerful vibratory being. And I have so much capacity to heal myself as well as facilitate the healing of others. And I may choose physical medicine. I am probably going to want to optimize my diet. I'm going to want to make sure my relationships are as harmonious as possible. I want to check in with my emotions. But ultimately, when I tune into my subtle awareness, it can help guide the flows of all of that. I can literally hold supplements and kind of feel into my energy and ask myself what feels right. That's internal data. Now, I'm not suggesting you don't go to a doctor and actually ask, would this supplement be good for me? That's also important. But it's all bringing us back to, to the top of our conversation about bringing the feminine back into medicine. The feminine is also about tapping into our inner knowing and being empowered by our ability to introspect and to be intuitive. And so we're coming back full circle, I think, to those practices now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, back when we had this harmonious, relationship with nature and frequency and energy, that's when we were being burned at the stake for being called witches, So like I said, this is a beautiful time to be alive right now where we're tapping back into that and remembering where that power lies and comes from. Like, it's just so amazing. Tell us a little bit about your album that's coming out. Like, I just can't get over, again, how freaking amazing you are and all the talents that you have. Like, not only are you wickedly good looking, very smart, intuitive, conscious, big hearted, and you're a musician. So you've got musical talent. Like, it's just not fair.
You're really kind. Thank you. My kids would probably give us a slightly different story.
So would mine. So, I would never go to a kid's, no.
As I mentioned, I always loved to sing, and it was a real joy to put together this debut album. It was really mostly a gift to myself, but also kind of a reflection on our times. So the album is called Kali Yuga Blues, or Kali Yuga Blues, as we would call it. And what is that? You go to kaliyugablues.com, you can stream the album. It's available already now on all streaming platforms. So you can check it out on Spotify or Apple. Just go by my first name, Shamini, and then type in Kali Yuga Blues and you'll find it. But it's really kind of an exploration of what it means to be human in times of real density. So each song actually represents a chakra, and I'm pulling on a lot of my most recent work where I did a lot of fronting of heavy metal and hard rock bands.
I'm sorry, what?
Story. But yeah, so I grew up singing classical, Western, in high school. Long story short, I showed up for choir practice one day and nobody else did. And my teacher realized I could sing. And then I was doing musical theater and she's like, I need to train you classically. I trained as a coloratura soprano, really considered going professional for a while when I was young and then didn't, went to graduate school because I really wanted to understand healing and the nature of vibration. But the biggest mistake I made was stopping singing for like 15 years because I was so perfectionist about it at this time. And I write about this in my book, and it's amazing because I've shared the story in my workshops and my live teachings and stuff. And I've had so many other female musicians and singers come to me and say, same. I did the same thing. I was super perfectionist about my art. I let it go for so many years and now I want it back. Well, I hope I can show you that I'm living proof that you can bring it back because never in my life did I ever think that I would put together a debut album that was really rooted in mantra, heavy metal, and hard rock. But there it is. And I'm happy with it, I'm happy with it because I did it, and getting good feedback on it. There's some really fun songs on there. If you type in Surefire Love on YouTube, you'll see a hilarious video that I put together for one of the songs. Surefire Love represents the fourth chakra, the opening to the heart. And it's all about the journey to self-love. It's really fun. Even my mother-in-law's in that video. She actually stole the show. She's great. So Yoga Blues is great because there's something in it for everyone. The first song, Safe Space, is about the root and kind of reclaiming our sovereignty and our freedom as women against the patriarchy. That song literally downloaded in me after Roe versus Wade was overturned, something I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. And I was literally reeling and I was like, how do I explain this to my teenage daughter?
I know, right?
What's happening in the world, and I'm Indian, right? So just talking with my cousin, my niece actually from India, and she was saying how even in Delhi today, women can't really walk safely alone, in the city. And this is a huge city. So there's still a lot to do, with respect to making sure that we are safe and beyond safe, that we're sovereign, that we're free as women all over the world. So that first song is very much about that. And the other songs follow the experience of a chakra. So they start pretty hard rock and then they kind of progressively lighten up a little bit more throughout the album. It's real fun. It was a great journey. And I would encourage everyone to make sure that no matter what it is that you do, and most of us, a lot of us do love our work. It's fulfilling. I love the work that I do. And my creative time is really important to nurture and sustain my energy. And I want that for everyone. A lot of the teaching that I do in my workshops, live and online, is about helping people reconnect with and reclaim their creativity if they feel like they lost it or never thought they had it. Because it's yours, it's your birthright. You are creative by nature of being human. You're creative. I think it's important that all of us not only recognize that, but that we come into it, because this is the time for us to co-create the future we want. And if we don't recognize ourselves as creative beings, then we're limiting our ability to co-create the future that we want. So allow yourself to come into your creativity fully. And when you do that, my experience is the joy of it just sort of takes you on a beautiful ride. You don't even know where it's going to take you. You just have to say yes.
This conversation is just so freaking beautiful right now. I literally have been grinding away for years. And I say, all work and no play makes Heather a miserable bitch. And lately I've gotten a little on the cranky, reactive side again. Life has not been fun. I haven't felt like I've been manifesting or creating a whole lot. And so lately I'm like, I'm done. I'm done pushing so hard. I'm done being the type A personality. And this is stuff I talk about to my clients all the time anyway, because it's that thing that they've got to kind of realize too, to help get better, right? You can't heal when you're stuck in fight or flight, right? When you're pushing. And so the last couple of days, I've really just tried to sit in that energy of, what's fun? What can I do next? What sparking more conversations, doing things that seem not productive, but they really end up being so productive when I get done with it, because it's just an energetic switch that then the universe co-conspires and brings me what it is that I was working so hard for to begin with, if that makes sense.
That's right. So and back to this, what seems to be a theme for our conversation today, tapping into feminine wisdom and the receptivity aspect. Again, in our culture, we have all been taught, men and women, however we identify gender-wise, or sexuality-wise, nearly all of us have sort of ingrained this idea that it's push, that it's outward facing, that we have to push our energy out to get things that we want. And that's not how it works. I mean, it's a balance. Everything is a balance of giving and receiving. And most of us actually need to work on receiving. We need to work on receptivity and allowing ourselves the stillness to receive. And then not only does the manifestation happen easier, it's so much more enjoyable. It's so much more enjoyable. There is something to the effortlessness of it, because there's a surrender of the ego. When we sit in stillness, and I teach all of this, actually. It's the third part of my book is called The Healing Keys. So it's literally step-by-step guides on how to foster healing on a daily basis. And part of that I really anchor us in is creating a healing ritual for yourself, which can be very simple. And the power of that is really to come into a state of receptivity so that you can understand what you're desiring, and then you release it. You actually release it. You surrender the details. One of my dear friends always like to say, let God handle the details, right? It's not for you to handle the details. This is who I am. This is how I'd love to serve. This is what I would love to have in my life. And then just actually let it go and trust that the universe actually does have your back, that you are spiritually supported, and be open to how the help comes. It may sound like in our culture, we call it a pravachan, a spiritual discourse, what I'm saying. This sounds very like spiritually preachy. It's experience-based, honestly. All the good things that have happened to me have not been by pushing or by design or by agenda setting or for better or worse. I didn't sit there and create like a mind map of my life. I just sort of sat in receptivity, asked to be of service, and followed my heart. And I think that we all just need to remember that as much as we think we're in control, we're not. It's just agents of a whole divine co-creation that's happening at every minute. And we're a part of it. It's beautiful. We're all playing together.
Absolutely. Can I get an amen? That was just so beautiful. So this is so obviously I'll put this stuff in the show notes, but this is so you've said a few things, but it's the shameless, plug time of the show. So what's the book called again, and where can they find that? And then where can they find more information out about your center?
You bet. Okay. So the book is called Healing Ourselves, Biofield Science and the Future of Health. It's available at all booksellers worldwide. Happy to say it's won 2 awards, which is a real honor.
Congratulations.
Thank you. You can go to healingourselvesbook.com, all one word. And I do encourage folks to go there because you'll get some really cool bonuses. You can just say, you purchase the book from there, click the Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Goodreads or Thrift Books or whatever buttons, and then sign up for bonuses. I have bonuses including meditations, wonderful interviews with my colleagues, Greg Braden, Deepak Chopra, Bruce Lipton, Donna Eden, lots of goodies there for you at healingourselvesbook.com. And that'll take you to my website. And the album is Kali Yuga Blues, and you can find it on all streaming platforms. You'll also find it on my website. And along with the stories behind each song, which is kind of cool. If you want to know, what's the story behind the song, I'll tell you. And do join our nonprofit collaborative. We have free dialogues on healing with leaders in the community every month. They usually happen the first Friday of the month. We have people joining in from all over the world live. It's a really wonderful community. You can go to chi.is, chi.is. That stands for Consciousness and Healing Initiative, chi.is. And you'll see all kinds of goodies there, including ways to plug into these free dialogues on healing every month.
I'm definitely going to be checking that out. I'd love to learn how to be more involved with that, because that is right up my alley. That is what I have been, all the skills and everything I've gathered, including my own, personal healing crisis experience. This is what it's made me for. So put me in, coach. I look forward to looking more into that. Thank you again so much. I've been brought to tears almost a few times during this show, just out of pure gratitude. I can't say thank you enough, and love everything you're doing in the world. And make sure to go check her out, everybody, and have a healthy day. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
If you learned anything, even one little nugget in any episode, please do not keep us a secret. Like, share, subscribe, and leave a review on Apple, on Spotify. That is how we get this information out there, and we change this paradigm one person at a time. I can't do it by myself. I need your help. Also, make sure to know that disclaimer, anything that you hear on this, you cannot hold Discovering Health LLC, Renegade Health Boss, The Line Boss, or Heather Gray liable for anything. Always consult your doctor before doing anything new. Do not take this as medical advice. This is your disclaimer. And then also, if you want to know the foundations of health, right? All that I talk about on how I get healthy, the absolute foundation: sleep, diet, exercise, what to eat, toxins, how to detox mold, all of it. You can get it in your own course at rhbcourses.com, right? Start your healing journey today, as little as $79. Start today, rhbcourses.com. Stay tuned, and thanks for joining us.